Hello and welcome back to the channel. LC here with 10 more tips to help you improve and dominate in Multiversus. Due to the overwhelming response to the first vid, you know we gotta give it the run back. And today we'll be focusing on both advanced tips and standard practical measures when it comes to improvement for your gameplay, including things such as optimal edge guarding, figuring out your control scheme, and matchup discussions. So make sure you stick around for the whole video and drop a like and a sub if you learned something today that helped out your gameplay. So let's lead off with talking about one of the most crucial elements when it comes to any platform fighters. That's recovery and edge guarding. We'll roll number 1 and number 2 into this. Edge guarding is exactly what it sounds like. Players attempt to guard access to the edge of the stage or platform so as to knock their adversary off so they plummet to their doom. Now while we're still pretty early in this game, in time it will definitely look like this.
Gets got by Photon Edge. Oh!
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
So right now is the best time to try and hone your edge guarding and recovery skills. Let's start off with the basic fundamentals of this, shall we? To start with, all characters have a variety of recovery options that typically come in the form of either a side or up specials, which give the entire roster at least a fighting chance to get back to the stage. However, keep in mind that not all recovery options are created equally, and some characters have clear advantages over others. Being familiar and understanding the options available to the entire roster when it comes to stage recovery is going to be critical when formulating your plan to knock out opponents. That being said, let's split this into two sections, first attempting to recover and get back to the platform, and then we'll discuss true edge guarding. So when it comes to attempting to get back to the stage, the first thing you want to take note of is your knockback arc in regards to where you went flying off the stage. The first measure you want to employ is referred to as KI or knockback influence. This will allow your character to slow their momentum down and can prevent unnecessary KOs. This can be done by manipulating the left analog stick into the opposite of whatever direction you just went flying in. Make sure you practice and get a feel for the KI inputs in this game, as I found them to definitely be a bit stricter than say Smash Brothers or Brawlhalla from my limited testing. And then moving on to step 2, you're out in the air and you're attempting to recover. Let's review what options you have. Now if you've been knocked in a vertical position above the stage, you can attempt to slow fall back to the platform. With your re-entry, this can also be aided by the usage of special moves or aerial dodges. This will be key at keeping your opponents randomized so your opponent doesn't know what options you'll be using when coming down. If you always land with the same option, they're going to quickly catch on and start punishing you. Now for the significantly harder of the two scenarios, being at a horizontal knockback away from the stage. Now while your first instinct may be to instantly jump or after KIing to keep your momentum, be careful of doing this as you'll be giving up one of your best resources to get back to the stage. Depending on where you are on the map, the general idea is to utilize as few resources as possible to get back to the side of the platform, which will refresh your available jumps and aerial options. Find what works best for you and your character and your current playstyle. Then moving on to the final part of the equation is once you've actually reached the ledge, you now have several critical decisions to make. If your opponent is near the edge of the platform, they are likely waiting for you to commit to an action and respond accordingly. Utilizing attacks that have very large vertical hitboxes can be useful in preventing edgeguard attempts. However, this becomes a bit of a gamble if the opponent opts to just straight up jump off the platform and attack you. Now you'll have two different options. You can either attempt to just try and fight them straight up on the ledge, or you can try and time and dodge perfectly in order to avoid their attacks and get back to the stage. Both options have their risk reward, so it's up to you and to read your opponent in the scenario to see which is going to work best for you in that scenario. And that's a quick look at recovery options. So let's take a look at the other side of the coin, edge guarding. So you've knocked someone off the platform, right? So what you do next will be entirely dependent on your playstyle and your character selection. For example, if you're using a range-based character, it may be best to just attempt to set up shop or projectiles to force an interaction from your opponent. Or if you're more aggressive, you can attempt to go off the platform and perform a down aerial attack, which is a universal, very powerful spike move for the entire cast. Depending on the level of confidence in your ability, it may be worth it to get into the habit in doing everything necessary to KO characters off platforms, as this can give you an extraordinary advantage and an early stock lead if properly executed. In the end, the risk-reward paradigm is yours to consider, but as the game evolves, this will be the definitive meta, so get ready for people attempting to do everything in their power to keep you from coming back to the platform. And then moving on to number 3, we have combos. This is going to be one of many avenues you can use to elevate your gameplay to the next level and actually put your opponent in just straight up unfair scenarios. Case in point, on the surface getting these going may seem a bit daunting, so let's go over some of the general rules. First things first, you'll want to change the settings in the lab to show you if you're actually doing a true combo string. This will ensure that while you're out there practicing, it will properly translate to the battlefield when it comes to knockback influence and hit stun deterioration. So to start with, most characters have a standard neutral attack string which can be cancelled into jumps or fast falls, which can help you extend your combos. Now, one thing to note is that combos will behave differently depending on the character, weight type, and the current percentage that they're at, so keep that in mind. All characters in the roster have a universal launcher move and up attack, which will lift the characters off the ground and allow you to begin your aerial sequence. Now, depending on the character's aerial and grounded move kit, you can continue this juggle for a series of hits until the hit stun taps out. Employ combos in your strings and resets to keep your opponents guessing whilst maximizing your damage output. I've left a link to a terrific resource by the guys over at Smash University, which goes into great depth in how to create optimal combo structures for the playable roster. And sliding in at number 4, it's a team thing. First things first, don't be this guy.
I'm supposed to wear myself out for the team? What team? No, what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna look out for myself, and I'm gonna get mine.
Now right out the gate, I understand how the team aspect of this game can be, well, a bit frustrating at times. Due to the game not having a true ranked mode at the time of this writing, you're slotted with everyone from God mode sweats to people who literally just downloaded the game 5 minutes ago. So let's discuss a few things to make you a better teammate and hopefully save a few controllers and monitors out there. One of the core things you want to do is make sure that you're playing to your current role strength. If you're a bruiser, go out there and abuse some people. If you're a support, you probably don't want to be frontline. And if you're Iron Giant, just literally spam this move 100 times in a row until your opponent straight up rage quits. Playing in a manner that makes your character's toolkit excel in each matchup is also critical to ensure optimal efficiency out there on the battlefield. And that leads us into something I don't hear being discussed nearly enough, and that's awareness. Being aware of what's going on the field, not only with friend but foe as well during the match, will give you the necessary data to make much better informed decisions in the heat of the moment. Adaptation is the name of the game. This could be something as simple as seeing that your teammate is at very high percentage, so you'll want to switch tactics to defend them from opponents looking to KO or edge guard them. Conversely, if you're in a situation where the opponent has one player at extremely high percentage, you'll want to change gears quickly and attempt to finish off that stock. Having a good sense of awareness is the difference between this screen and this screen. In closing for the team section, if you only take away one thing from this section, is to treat both yourself and your teammates with grace. No one is perfect out there. There will always be mistakes made on both sides of the fence, and we all have matchups and tactics that we're going to be vulnerable to. This is where the beautiful side of the team element comes in at. You can help shore up those weaknesses for your ally, and by treating teammates as a true companion as opposed to a mild nuisance, this can really help positively change your mentality regarding the overall team play. But don't get me wrong, there are always going to be some genuinely bad players out there who have no interest in improving and merely just want a mindless distraction from life in the form of competitive gaming. But for the vast majority of players that I've ran into so far, they pretty much have your back and they want to improve. So let's help each other out on this front. And sliding in at number 5, we have perks. Wait, not that type. Okay, so let's talk perks. One of the more interesting additions into the Multiversus equation is perks you can select prior to battle. You unlock perks naturally with each character progression, and once you hit higher levels, you'll also have the ability to utilize your allies' unlocked perks. While we'll save the in-depth breakdown for a full-blown perk discussion in future videos, allow me to review some bullet points at least. Perks are broken down into 4 different categories, either offense, defense, utility, or character specific. All of them have their utility, and optimal pairing with certain playstyles or character types is going to be key to make each perk shine. For example, Velma is insane if you give her Make It Rain Dog and Deadshot, as they both increase the damage of projectiles, which she'll be throwing out an awful lot. Perks also stack and provide a significant benefit when paired with other allies' perks. I found that in certain situations, honestly, it's actually just worth it to just get the stack buff and forego my own personal perk selections, as certain perks when stacked become kinda insane honestly. Some of the bonuses you get are like 20%, they're really good and it can definitely make a difference in your game plan. So yeah, experiment with all the perks out there and see what works best for you. I would say that most of them are relatively useful. And then jumping over to number 6, let's talk about some controls. The one thing we didn't review in our last video was some of the optimal control schemes for Multiversus, so let's take a look at that now. One thing about Multiversus that I kind of like actually is that it doesn't really require that many buttons to be mapped, which can be a huge benefit depending on how you prefer your overall layouts. Going from the top down, there's a selection for either default or legacy falling more in line with like a Super Smash Bros. Base layout. Here's a look at the current layout that I'm using. Now, there's not really going to be a right answer when it comes to how you want this set up, but I would say having your dodge button mapped to like a shoulder button seems to work out well ergonomically for most people, but your mileage may definitely vary. Take some time and experiment with different layouts and see what suits you best, and don't be afraid to take it back to the drawing board if necessary. I've already changed my layout 3 different times, so it's no real biggie. Also, some controls you may want to consider changing in your UI are the following. Allowing your hit percentage to be displayed at the top of the screen is really good, especially if you're hosting like streams or something like that or tournaments. It's going to be good so that they don't really have to try and follow each separate character. They can just look at the top, really good as well. And then also changing your own personal color, I think it's pretty good, especially if you suffer from something like color blindness. But I found it really useful just to keep track of my character if I know they're going to be the same color every single time. And then moving on to number 7, we have status effects. Now this game has a metric ton of status effects, like I'm talking enough to rival a Final Fantasy game. The good news is that some of these are really only one character specific, for now anyways, and some you may rarely encounter, so in that vein we'll be focusing on the major status effects you can expect to encounter in most matches. Starting off with both Strengthen and Weaken. Both are very straightforward elements. Strengthen is a direct buff to the damage that you deliver, while Weaken increases the knockback and damage you will receive for a short interval. Also, this debuff can be stacked, so be kind of wary of that as well. Then jumping over to Armor, these are attacks typically used from the tank class that allow characters to complete their moves while not suffering any knockback penalty. Be careful though, as you'll still accrue the damage from the attack that was dealt, and this can add up really quickly if you're relying on a lot of armored based attacks. Now one status effect that you'll see quite a bit is going to be the Ignited effect. Most characters will get this after certain conditions are met in battle, whether it be them KOing somebody or having an ally KO'd. You'll see kind of that Super Saiyan glow around them. The benefit is that you'll accrue damage which will decay over time, and this is also going to be stackable. And to cap off this section, we have the Invisible status effect, which will make you invulnerable to any projectiles. This is something that you'll see like Batman players use a lot on the field, as his Air Glide and his Smoke Bomb both have these properties. Very, very useful in a pinch. And then moving on to number 8, we have the Offensive State of Mind. Moving on to this section, I want to dive into something that seems more and more true with each passing day that I'm playing this game. Namely that this game is built for aggression. Between the lack of a block button and the relatively low ceilings on most stages, there really aren't many two places to hide and play pure keep away from your opponents. In most typical cases, your ops are only a short dash away from being directly in your face. So what am I saying in a nutshell here? 99% of the time, you've got to fight it out. You can't really just sit back and camp or play like extended neutral. Very few characters in this entire cast are designed for pure keep away playstyle, so knowing when to enter the fray and press advantage will help swing the pendulum in your favor if you execute it properly. This isn't to discount things such as like good movement and well-timed dodges, but in truth you can only evade so much before ultimately you need to fight. If you just plan on running away or like playing extended neutral, that's not going to really work out for you in this game unless your name is Mr. Bugs Bunny. That's probably the only character that can get away with it. It's better that this decision is made from you internally rather than being bullied into it by your aggro opponents. This is a fighting game after all. Only tip here is just don't confuse feeding with contributing offensively to your team. Pick your spots carefully and approach avenues that are advantageous to your character type. And then moving on to number 9, we have Map Adaptation. With this game literally being within its launch week, naturally it only comes with a handful of stages. However, it would be a mistake to underestimate the level of impact each stage has to each independent character matchup. Things such as lower ceiling thresholds means that you can easily be aerially chased and knocked out early on certain stages, while certain stages like the absolutely cursed Haunted Mansion are much more horizontal based, and it means you can survive attack that would easily KO you on more open stages. Knowing and understanding each stage, and more importantly, which elements are abusable, can give you the edge against your competitors. This also extends to each character's individual move kit. Some attacks are quite neutered on certain stages, while certain specials become absolutely broken depending on how big the stage is. Keep this in mind and change your tactics accordingly to best outplay your opponent. And to close this out, we have quite possibly the hardest of all the tips on this list, and that's going to be proper training. On the surface, training seems extremely basic. You boot up the lab and go practice some combos, maybe even some nifty edge guarding strats that you've seen online, and that's fine and all, but I'm not exactly talking about that. I'm talking about fully maximizing your time in the lab and turning it into more of a session within the hyperbolic time chamber. Now this is where the really hard part comes in at. Being real with yourself and your faults as a player. Looking at what you're struggling with out there on the battlefield and what needs to be done to change the outcome. This can be eased a little bit by recording your gameplay sessions and reviewing wins and losses alike. Let me say that again, wins and losses alike. I know that it can be super cringe to look back at the mistakes you made in a match that cost you dearly, but believe me when I say that this is the most efficient way to correct problems in your gameplay. In a nutshell, what you're doing is rewiring your mind's decision making and what your default response is going to be when confronted with similar scenarios in the heat of the moment. Something as simple as not panic dodging or not dodging too early, or dealing with problematic attacks from your opponent and training your response system to make more optimal decisions as a reaction. So how do we achieve this? The best way typically is to put yourself in that situation as many times as possible and to train your reaction until it's absolutely second nature. For certain simple attacks, this can be done by changing the dummy settings in the training mode to just have them do that attack, and you can train your response over and over again. But for more complex setups, I would recommend reaching out to one of the many Multiversus communities, either in Discord to find a training partner. Feel free to join our own community Discord if you're looking for just that. I like discussing tech, and I'll be down to help you if I have time, of course. I don't want to turn this into a full-blown FGC psychology course, but proper training is something that will pay you more dividends than 100 hours of making the same mistakes repeatedly in ranked. And that'll do it for a second round of 10 more tips to help you improve your Multiversus gameplay. If you found this useful, drop a comment and a like letting me know how this impacted your gameplay. Until next time, LC signing out. Peace.